go ahead and get started. Hi, today I'm here with historical fiction author Heather Wood. Pleasure to have you here, Heather.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
It's a thrill here. So new to me author Heather, historical fiction. I've been looking at some of her stuff. Her book Weaving Roots that came out in June looks so good. She just held up the cover for those of you that are going to be smart and watch the YouTube video of this too. Weaving Roots. I love that cover, Heather. Tell
Thank
us a
you.
little bit about the book, and we're going to launch into all kinds of stuff about you. But since you have the book up, let's hear a little bit about Weaving Roots.
Sure. So Weaving Roots is featuring an underrepresented era in Christian fiction in American history. It is about second generation Irish Americans living and working in 1828 Baltimore. As far as I know through my searches, I have not found another fiction book in the general market or Christian fiction that features this people group in this time and place. So I'm writing about this era because it's about the parents of the family in my other series, which happens in the 1860s and 70s. So after I published that series, then I wanted to go back and tell their origin story, which started with their father when he was 10 years old in this book. So the first book, he's just a boy. It features his aunt, who's his primary caregiver, and he lives with her and his father. His mother passed away shortly after he was born. So his father has recently moved them to Baltimore to get a new start, and his aunt takes him to the local school for Irish children, which is based on a real school in Baltimore at that time, and meets the schoolmaster, Colum Gallagher. And that's how the story begins. It continues to explore primarily his aunt, Betha. It's mostly her story, and she's wanting to raise Henry to know the Lord and to love the Lord, but she has a brother who's his father who is not walking with the Lord himself and is making poor choices that are affecting his son's life. And she's building this friendship with the schoolmaster, Colum Gallagher, who has his own challenges as the schoolmaster. Based on real history, it raises the question of the Bible in school, in this particular school, in this era. So it was really cool. I really enjoy when I write to pull in real American church history. So when I found this information and this struggle with this particular school in the 1820s and 30s, I wanted to highlight it and bring it to life and explore what the characters might have thought and gone through and how they made the decisions that they made. And that's what Weaving Roots is about. So Betha is a spinner. That's why she has a spinning wheel on the cover. They are an artisan family. They are linen weavers. So her brother works the loom. She works the wheel. And they make linen together. And at this time, it's the beginning of the first industrial revolution. So the Lowell mills are having a rise to prominence at this time, and linen is on its way out. And so they're seeing their livelihood threatened, and all that goes into play in the story.
Wow, you have a lot packed into there, and it sounds absolutely fascinating. So, the Irish, touching on the Irish family
Yes.
roots and all that, I think is really fascinating in itself. And then that time period, and I love how you're doing it's like a prequel to your, it's Finding Home series.
Yes.
So it's a prequel to that. I read the back cover. I fully intend to read this book because it really does look very good. I love that. My husband, his family is from Ireland, and he is a second generation Irish.
Oh,
So
wow.
family came over from Ireland. His mother's family came directly from Ireland, and his father's family came from Spain and Italy. But that Irish, my mother-in-law was full-blooded Irish angel, feisty and just
Yeah.
adorable. So, and I have some Irish in my background, but most especially with that, the period of that time where people were treated so unfairly, the Irish immigrants coming in and had such a struggle
Yes, this is actually before the Great Famine. So the Irish at this time were coming over for different reasons, and it was kind of a different experience at this time. In about 10 years, the Great Famine is going to start, and then it really changes a lot. But at this time, most of the Irish that are coming over are Presbyterian, not Catholic.
Oh,
They're
really?
yeah, they're coming over because life is difficult for them in Ireland as Presbyterians. They are the minority. And so they're more the middle class, or they're not, this is not yet Irish coming over because they're, in poverty that you'll
Right.
start seeing like the huge waves of here shortly. But I guess in a give my characters 10 or 15 years and they'll be there helping those immigrants as they arrive.
Right. It sounds fascinating. And then the idea of having the loom and the linen weaving and all that is completely different than what most people are going to read about. So even if you were to cover a time period that has already been covered, I think your unique, the unique artisan products that they contribute to in the book are really fascinating, and it sounds wonderful. So that is Weaving Roots, and you have other books. That's the first book of that series, correct?
Yes, it's the only one out so far. I'm working on the second one right now, which is I'm very excited about. It is I'm going to address some history that I have waited my entire life to be able to write about. So that will be coming in hopefully next year, Lord willing.
Okay, now Weaving Roots, is that what is your series title for that?
Yes, that's the Gathering of Mercies series.
Ring of Mercy series. Wow. Okay. Can you give us a little heads up on what that next book might look like?
So the next book will be about Colin, the schoolmaster in Weaving Roots. It's about his brother Patrick. Patrick is an abolitionist, and being in Baltimore, that's a slave state at this time. It will take place in the 1830s, so it will be featuring some abolitionists that I have been wanting to write about for a long time. Very fascinating history, a very discouraging time in history for people who were against slavery because things are getting worse right now, not better. More and more stricter laws are getting passed. This is even before the Fugitive Slave Act. And so for people standing against slavery, it's a very disheartening time because nothing's getting better. It's only getting worse. And of course, we know it's going to take an entire war a generation later to actually solve the problems they're fighting against now. But it really is going to speak to standing for what is right, even when it's just completely disheartening and discouraging and you don't see anything changing.
We're kind of living through those times now, aren't we?
It seems very relatable.
Yeah.
I will tell you that. I am reading some of the stories of these abolitionists, and it feels very relatable.
Yeah. You see the persecution when you're trying to do the right thing, and then you're becoming the minority, obviously.
Yeah, they were really like the public enemies, and this was a time of mob violence. That was how people dealt with someone speaking out about something they didn't like, as they would go mob their house. And um just very scary, scary time to be standing up for what you know is right, and very, very incredibly brave people.
Hmm. So when you've been into, I read your website, you've been into history most of your life, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
US history. So how did that passion start for you? Do you remember?
I have always loved history as long as I can remember, and I think I got a lot of it from my dad. I know that church history, and probably particularly American church history, was something that he really enjoyed learning about. So he did take us to historical sites growing up. I don't think when I was a middle schooler and started to fall in love with history, I became a certified Civil War buff. I joined a Civil War reenacting unit, and I was all things Civil War all through my teen years. I don't think I knew at the time that that was influenced by my dad. I probably would not have given him credit. But as I got into writing and I realized as an adult, And I realized that what I was wanting to write about was real American church history. I realized like, hey, I got that from my dad, didn't I? That's where it came from.
Well, that's
But
nice.
he passed away 14, 15 years ago now.
Wow.
But that influence is still, it's been a strong influence in my life, and it's something that I definitely, it's my own now. I really do love history. I often say that I write novels as a reason to research, because
Mhm.
it allows me to dig into things and search for answers for things that otherwise I wouldn't have reason to do. So that's one of my favorite parts of it. I really do love the history.
Well, and it's nice that it's like a legacy your dad left you,
Yeah.
so it keeps him alive for you, which is,
Yeah.
I think it's pretty sweet. It's very sweet. So
And
you,
so many of these church history stories are either completely untold or just forgotten. They're people that, we're not learning about in school these days. We're probably not learning about in church either. So a lot of these people are really, their stories are getting lost. And I think it's very encouraging as a believer to read stories of people who have gone before us and stood for their faith before us, and how God carried them through their difficulties, and just the awesome things that God was doing all throughout history, because every corner of history you look at, God was there. He was working. And
right.
so I just like to uncover, like, what was that? What was he doing at this time and place?
Well, you look at so many, I read a devotional every day called Streams of the Desert by L.B. Cowman. And the people in that book that she references, it was she put all these together because they were her husband's favorite theologians and favorite, Charles Spurgeon and George Matheson and so many different people that are in there that he really was inspired by as a in ministry that he was. And then she cared for him the last 6 years of his life. He was dying, and she cared for him,
Oh, wow.
read her. And so she put all these together, and you go back, and some of these people I've never heard of before. So I
Yeah.
always, I've got my phone next to me and I'm reading a devotional, I'm looking them up and
Yeah.
telling my husband, oh my gosh, did you know about this person? And you find out the incredible things that they did
Yeah.
in their lives and how God moved and worked in them.
Yeah.
And it's mind-blowing and it's inspiring.
Yes.
It gives
Yes.
you hope that even in our little tiny world, however insignificant we feel we are, God's working in us and through us for his plan and purpose.
Yes.
And that's encouraging. It's so encouraging. So you were telling me that you homeschool, you have 4 children,
Yes, I do.
to 12, and you
Yes.
homeschool them. So my goodness, where do you find time? What does your writing time day look like for you?
Yeah, so I wake up and after I read my Bible and have my breakfast, I go on a walk, and that's usually when I have like the most ideas brewing in my head for writing, and then I can usually sit down and write them down around 9 p.m. when I'm too tired to think straight.
Oh,
It works very badly. I don't
oh my
recommend
God.
it.
But you're getting work done.
I fit it in. My kids are great. I have taught them from the time they were little to give me some quiet time every afternoon, so they have to go be quiet and play. Their dad does work at home
Okay.
also. So I do usually have some margin in the afternoon, and then if I can't get it in, then a lot of times my writing takes place in the evening after they go down. And um, a couple times a year, I'll go on a writing retreat, and that really helps for me to get a good head start and momentum going. Because then when I get back to my busy life, I have the wheels turning, and it's easier
Right,
for me to sit down in the margins and write for 15 minutes if I already have the bulk of the thinking done.
right.
Um, so those times are really important for me being able to put out a book every year, is if I can get away, get some good thinking done, and get some good momentum going.
Now, your writers' retreats, are you off on your own or are you with a group of other writers?
I I have a couple friends I usually go get a cabin with somewhere. I'm very strict. They'll like spend a lot more time sitting out in the living room talking, and I'll be in the bedroom with the door shut. Like, I'm here to work. I can visit with you guys while we eat. It's really terrible because I want to visit with them too, and you have to choose between the two. But
They're not writers.
they are, yeah, they're there to
Are.
read. Yeah, but they end up sitting out there brainstorming with each other, and I'm just like, I just need to be alone and me and my computer and think, and that's how I work best. So
How long do you usually research before you? Because I found I write contemporary, but I've written a couple of books that were historical in nature, and digging into the history was so much. And I taught, actually, I was a teacher for years, so I taught U.S. history. So you'd think historical fiction would be my thing, right? My jam, but the amount of research that is
yeah.
involved in that is incredible to me. So you spend how much time researching before you even start writing?
Um, Probably about 6 months. I spend a significant amount of time researching. Um, Sometimes I'll research for like 3 and then get started writing and then end up keep researching as I write. I do always end up keeping researching as I write, always. But for that first head start, I usually find at least like 2 or 3 books that I'm like, I need to at least start here. I'll read these first and then I'll see if I get like ideas from them. And they do. I get inspiration for my plots from real history. Um, or like who my character will be definitely comes from something that I might learn in a research book or at website somewhere. So I do spend a lot of time researching. I always feel like it's not enough. It's very important to me to try to represent well the people that I'm trying to represent, even though like I'm doing it for a 21st century mindset. I can't, completely write them with 19th century mindsets or we wouldn't like them probably. But I try to, I think we would understand them. I don't think we
Right.
would
Well,
fully be
their
able to get
motivation.
into their heads.
Well, their motivation and their
Yeah.
culture and the way they were raised, and you're
Their
talking
worldview was just
about
different. And
conviction.
so I do try to be faithful to them and consider, what was important to their people groups at that time and things like that. But then in the end, I do have to, yeah, write them. Because when at the end of the day, the people who are reading it and being edified by it is us, and so I
Right,
do need
right,
to, I'm
right.
writing for us. So, but I do spend a lot of time researching and I love it.
Do you, I have to ask this, I'm a romantic at heart, and even in my women's fiction series that was not supposed to be romance, I can't help it,
Yeah.
a little romance throughout. Do most of your books have some romantic
All
element?
my books. Mhm.
Okay,
They
you're a
all
girl
have
after
some
your own
romance
heart.
in them. I can't stay away from it.
Yeah.
Always my main arc is their relationship with the Lord. That's where their growth comes from. That's where their change comes from. Their answer to their problem is never in the romantic relationship, but I can't stay away from a good love story.
I know, I can't help it either. It's, a sucker for a happy ending. Yeah. So we have all these books coming up. You have your series, or 4 books in your Finding Home series.
Yes.
And we have, go ahead and show them. So the first one is Until We Find Home. The
Yeah,
second,
until we all find home. It's set in Civil War Chicago.
okay, Until
Until
We
we all
Should,
run free.
okay,
This happens immediately after the Civil War, so 1866 to 1868-ish. Uh,
in in the setting, where is it?
yeah, so the main character, he's the brother out of the other book. The main character moves to a lumber camp in Wisconsin.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he wants to get away from the crowds and away from women
How does that work for him?
very badly. Um,
And book number 3.
Until the Light Breaks Through takes place over the Great Chicago Fire in
Oh, wow.
1870.
I like the lantern. There you go.
Yeah. And it features the youngest brother in that series.
Okay.
And then my Christmas novella is Until We All Share Joy. It's about a more minor character in my series, so you don't have to have read the other books to read this one. I wrote this one as a more low risk, easy introduction to my writing. If anybody wanted to try out my writing, and wasn't ready to delve into the whole big series, like this is a great introduction to the way I write and the types of things that are
Right.
important to me and those types of things.
I
But
love
it
the
does have spoilers for this series, so just keep that in mind, but you can read it without having read the others.
I love the cardinals on the cover, my favorite birds.
Yeah, actually my niece painted all my covers.
Oh, really?
She did.
Interesting. How old is your niece?
Well, when she started, I don't know, probably 15.
Wow.
You know, she's in her young 20s now.
Wow, that's
She did,
interesting.
yeah, she did
So
all of
you
them.
guys have cardinals in Virginia?
Yes, it's our state bird also.
Is it?
Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, I love we have cardinals all over here. The mockingbird is our state bird, which
Oh, interesting.
is appropriate, but the cardinals, I love the cardinals. They're sweet.
It was really fun. It was hard not to buy just all the cardinal things when I put that book out.
It would
I
be,
always like to buy some like little things to go with the book, either to include with the books or use for giveaways or whatever. And it was hard not to just go on Etsy and just buy all the cardinal things.
yeah, well, there's a lot out there. Okay, well, Heather, anything else? I guess one more question I have for you, starting the writing. So you're a history buff and you said that you used writing as an excuse to delve into the research of the history, but actually writing, what inspired you to do your actual first book? I mean, was it the history that came up and you just wanted to write it out and you decided to do fiction, or how did that play out for you?
So what happened is when I was a teenager, I used to just escape into my imaginary world in my mind whenever I was bored or wanted to escape. And I created a story about four adult siblings who were separated as children when their parents died. And they find each other again on opposite sides of the Civil War. And they are completely different from each other at this point. They have not grown up together. They don't know each other. They're really strangers. And they get together and try to form a family. And it goes very badly. And I always just had this story in my head. It begins at the beginning of the Civil War and it ends at the end of the Civil War. And that was the full extent of the story. Um, when I was in my early 30s, I started writing it down some of my favorite scenes just for fun, partly as an outlet for myself, partly, well, maybe one day my kids will find this on my computer. You know, I had no intention of actually writing an entire book and putting it out. I finished writing it. I realized I had written a complete book and I let a couple people read it. And I had my niece paint the cover. And I actually put it up on Amazon so that my mom could get a copy. That was why I published Until We All Find Home, was so my mom could have a copy of my story. I had no intention of ever writing another book. I had no intention of anybody else seeing it. And that was the beginning of my writing career.
Wow. That's what
So
you call an unintentional
it,
author.
it really was surprising to me to look back and see all the ways that God had orchestrated it where I was completely clueless and unaware. I didn't even pray about it because I thought that I was just writing for fun, just for myself. And afterwards, you know, my friends started finding out I wrote a book and I had like unsaved friends buying it and reading it. And I was like, oh my goodness, what did I write in that? I wasn't writing it to be evangelistic.
Right?
I didn't write it for a certain audience. I wrote it just to tell the story. And I was able to see afterwards just like how much God used it, even though it wasn't I was unaware. And it was a really cool realization for me of just like how God can use us and how much more it would be if I actually prayed about my work and asked him about what he wanted me to do with it and asked him about what he wanted me to write. So I started praying about the next book when I started writing it. And I asked him to take the story where he wanted it to go. And I asked him to take the marketing where he wanted it to go. And that was just such a game changer. But it just blew my mind that he used me anyway
Yeah.
and used this like silly little book anyway that I wrote just for me. And he's pretty amazing like that.
Yes, he is. Absolutely amazing that way. Well, it's been such a pleasure talking with you, Heather. I appreciate you telling us all about the history. I'm excited to read Weaving Roots. I think it looks like a fantastic book. How did you get the cover for that one?
Hannah Linder actually made it.
She's my cover designer now.
Isn't she great? She's
Yes,
so talented.
I'm redoing all of my covers for all of my novels. I'm redoing 6 covers, and I just hired her to do the first cover. I'm working with her. It's beautiful. And I did speak to somebody who is a big, just had a conference with a man named Vincent Davis. I don't know if you've heard of him, but
Yeah.
he's an Amazon ads expert, and he's self-publisher and helps people, figure out their keywords and all the things they need to do.
Yeah.
And I met him a year ago, May, at Blue Ridge Christian Writers Conference.
Cool.
And so I met him there, and he had something in his information about Hannah. And then I didn't know it was connected to him. I hired Hannah. Then I had a conversation with Vincent last week. I talked to him on a Zoom call, and I asked him who, I said, I hired Hannah to do my book covers. And he's like, oh, she's the only person I will use. She makes me look like a genius. And it was like
Yes.
confirmation for me that I made the right choice. Because it's a scary thing when you're jumping into the self-publishing realm and you have to find editors and book design, cover design,
Yes.
all this stuff on your own, especially when you've had a publisher doing it all for you. So yeah.
Well, I knew when I was, because I am very picky about covers. When I look at historical fiction covers, it drives me crazy if the dresses are not correct for the era. Or
Absolutely.
if the model's not wearing a corset or her hair is not done correctly, I might not pick up a book
Well,
if the cover model does not look accurate for the era. So I knew that was the number one most important thing to me. And I knew Hannah Linder was the person I could trust to do historical correctly.
Well, not only that, you probably have a higher awareness than most people picking up.
I know I do.
It's like if I like being an English teacher, I am so nitpicky about the editing side of things.
Yes.
So then I see people that are, oh, that's a 5-star book, and I'm like going crazy with the edits in my mind.
I
Saying,
got you. It ruins you. Writing ruins you. I tell you.
It ruins you to read good fiction. All of a sudden, you're the nitpicky. It does. Being a writer makes it very hard to be a good reader. So
yes, I hear you.
This has been a pleasure, Heather. I'm excited. When you come out with your second book, I'd love to have you back on.
Well, thank you.
Just to see your cover.
Excited about it. Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Well, good. It's been a pleasure. I wish you the best with Weaving Roots. I'm going to get that on my Kindle. That's going to be my next book to read. I am excited.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I appreciate it. It was such a joy.
Absolutely. So you be blessed, and we will talk again another time.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.